If you've been around the internet over the last few months, you may have noticed a small resurgence in discussion and videos regarding the 2004 animated film The Incredibles. This animated film about a family getting back into the groove of being superheroes and regular citizens was produced by Pixar for Disney. Ever since I was a kid, I've absolutely loved this movie, and the film has some very dark undertones and backstories on the supers, this universe's versions of humans with superpowers and other things present that a lot of people, not including myself because I'm freaking awesome, didn't notice were there. Granted, some of this stuff is surface level knowledge, but a lot of it is beyond that surface as bonus content on the movie's DVD. Oh yeah, there once was a time where DVDs held more than just the movie itself, and even sometimes games. But this extra content gave more to the lore and what we see throughout the film. A lot more backstory and context to the supers. I'll touch on it here and there in this video, but the main focus of it will be analog horror, because if you know anything about analog horror, it's a very easy to access and create genre, and anything current or popular eventually will become an analog horror. Whether or not it's of quality and actually looks good is up for debate, but we should have a new internet rule for it, or replace Rule 34 as, if it exists, there is analog horror of it. So that's exactly what we're going to look at to see if it truly manages to translate the themes well into analog horror, or if this is just another sloppy attempt at turning anything and everything into analog horror. So like, comment and subscribe, and let's dive into The Incredibles' disturbing analog horror.
Who wants the pressure of being super all the time?
Oh, that's a good start. Okay, anyway, so this video, titled The Incredibles Analog Horror, was made by Ryley Lewis. As we see, we're presented with the interviews of Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, Robert Bob Parr and Helen Parr. Everything here is shown in an analog horror style format that we've come to see a lot of. You know, we have the VHS static, the damaged looked quality of the colors on screen, the static sounding and muffled audio, etc. And it's not that bad. In terms of the scares, bam, we're shown it at around 19 seconds in. I thought the whole point of horror, or at the very least analog horror, was that the scare would build up and suspense would be created before a monstrous reveal or tease is shown. But it's just thrown at us in the form of a messed up looking Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl. It's a little cheap, despite the scare actually looking fairly decent. I like the look of the main parts of the image, the eyes and the smile. I know that the smile is a fairly used asset, but it all comes together quite well. But what's the purpose? We're then shown the scene from the movie where Mr. Incredible discovers Operation Kronos. I won't get too into what the operation is, but long story short, the main villain of the movie, Syndrome, built robots to kill off the supers, learn from their fights to make stronger robots, and orchestrate fights with them, battling the robots to look like the hero and save the day with his technology. Bob and Helen also have 3 kids, so of course he would have wanted to kill them off as well. So already we're getting into those dark themes, which is good. So naturally we get the scene showing the records on what robot has killed which super and vice versa. The scene looks a lot more eerie when it looks darker and grainier, which I really like, and the lack of audio as well really adds to this. It's all so creepy, and it would be, right? If you were Mr. Incredible in this situation and it wasn't a movie, you wouldn't be hearing the music we can hear watching the film now, would you? It would be an eerily quiet room, you could hear a drop of water hitting the ground, and you'd be worried that someone might find you snooping around in the room, wouldn't you? I think this video portrays that excellently, and then it murders all of that. Why would you do that? I get that we're shown that Syndrome thinks that Mr. Incredible has been terminated by one of his Omni robots, or actually has been in the analog horror, who knows? But why the Five Nights at Freddy's style jump scare? Syndrome here has a very early creepypasta look with bloody eyes and crying hyper-realistic blood too. It's such a very abrupt ending to this and makes me wonder what the point was. What was trying to be conveyed? That Syndrome killed off Mr. Incredible? Then what was with the beginning and the faces? You think that should allude to something, right? I guess not, despite them, you know, these faces looking decent, at least in my opinion. I get it looks like a rip of Smile Dog, but I still think it looks fine. I think these could have been utilized more too, since they're just shown for what looks like a cheap scare. Just because analog horror has spooky faces, it doesn't mean you need to lean into that as a gimmick. Build up some suspense like the Operation Chronos scene does. Maybe tie it into the story more, like perhaps they were sent into an insane frenzy right before death. I don't really think the video has enough time to establish anything like that, but I see the potential in what could have been reached if the video was given more time in the oven. Regardless, I still wanted to cover this video because it relates to Operation Chronos, and I think that the atmosphere for most of the video is done really well. It's just that the scares fall into the trap of quick and cheap horror. If you can even call those parts of the video horror due to how much we've seen of it before. I guess that's an issue in itself. I wonder what else Ryley makes on his YouTube channel. Huh? William Afton? Next, we have something that goes all in on the NSA files. For those who don't know, the NSA is the National Supers Agency, a government division that employs superheroes in The Incredibles. The bonus content found on the movie CD gives us audio files of the supers that we see in the movie, killed off in the movie, or thanks to Operation Chronos. So naturally, we have a whole analog horror series about them by CLOWNZ on YouTube, except they're the N.A.S, not the NSA for some reason. There's a plan for 12 videos in this series, and as of making this video, 9 have been released, and a 10th seems to be around the corner.
Hey! I saved your life!
You didn't save my life, you ruined my...
Alright, so I was going to structure this part of the video like I would with the series that I cover, where I go from episode to episode explaining key details and things that are hidden or easily missable. And then we look at callbacks to other episodes and piece the story all together, but this is like, I don't know, I don't have it in me here. I'm not strong enough. Look, this is all it seems like it's all some genuine attempt at making an analog horror series, but it falls a bit into the trap of using tropes just for the sake of it. I've noticed that one big trope that's used is the static image with audio. The first video in the series does this heavily, with it just being images of Gamma Jack and Hypershock and then their audio logs that play in the background. What the audio logs don't show are the other statistics about the supers, like their powers and personality, which Syndrome would have used to best them. For example, Gamma Jack attacks with radiation bursts, has high intellect, and is a bit of a ladies' man who prioritizes saving pretty women during a villain attack. He's also prone to tyrannical and megalomaniacal impulses and thinks supers are a superior race. I mean, there's bound to be a super who thinks like this, right? And I can see how a villain could use that to their advantage. You know, by using a woman as a trap, or by damaging Gamma Jack's ego, something like that. And then we have Hypershock, who can generate seismic waves, can fly, has super strength, enhanced endurance, but his seismic attacks don't affect non-solid material, and he has a bit of an anger issue and temper. You get a gist of most of that in both of their audio logs, but it's much clearer to see on the written file. That's all we get in the first video, which makes me wonder why the video was even made. Okay, that sounds a bit harsh, but what I mean to say is, was this meant to be a one-off where it was just showing audio files, but now it's actually a full series? Or was it a purposeful setup for a series, because all we're shown, like I said, are just the audio logs and then some analog horror inspired visuals, and that's that. It's not exactly intriguing as it could be, but let's follow this to video 2. Shortly after the interview with Mr. Incredible, video 2 follows the Incredibles movie scene where Mr. Incredible saves a man who hurled himself off of a building to... Well, you know. In an ironic twist, the man is injured during his save, and he and other people claim to be victims of Mr. Incredible after being injured because of him when he stops a train from derailing. And yes, it is his fault that the train almost derailed because he did throw a bomb onto the tracks, it exploded, and then he had to stop the train, but there was no ill intention with that since he was throwing a bomb away from Syndrome when he was younger to save his life. But you know, the history of the supers and the build-up to being banned from fighting crime, and other historical facts like the ceasing of the use of capes on their suits due to too many cape-related deaths are very interesting. In one case, a teenage super's life was cut short when her cape was responsible for throwing her into a plane turbine. That's dark, and reminds me of something else that happens in the film, but anyway, the video brings us to the court process and has one of the most unintentionally funny things I've ever seen in analog horror. Just watch this.
Over.
It is time for their secret identity to become their only identity. Time for them to
Attempt suicide.
Come on! He looks like he's ready to make out with me as he sits seductively on a couch or bed or just something. And that droning noise that plays adds to the humor. I gotta use that in my videos, holy moly. Anyway, we move on to Operation Kronos and that scene again, and we see that Mr. Incredible has been terminated. Weirdly enough, all of this is framed very eerily, just like with the one-off video that we saw, and it creates a sense of uneasiness. It's good in that regard, but it's a shame that there wasn't much more done with it in this video. Yes, the analog horror story expands in the future videos, but this one should have done a subversion of expectations. Maybe, I mean, this is just my personal suggestion, but if you've watched the movie before and remember parts of it, then you'll know that nothing crazy happens during the parts that are shown. We don't need a Syndrome jump scare, but something could have worked since we'll see that the story is going off in a completely different direction. From video 3 onwards, the plot gets bonkers. Mr. Incredible is deceased due to self-slaughter, and there's an anti-super hotline now. I guess supers are going off the rails or are being targeted to be killed. It seems that there's some sort of government power involved now eliminating supers and or warning the public of the dangers of supers. Perhaps supers aren't good guys in this universe, or we're hearing things from Syndrome's warped view on everyone. As the series continues, we see that Syndrome is probably leading the anti-N.A.S, or as I called it, the anti-super hotline, and I guess his solution was the Omnidroids we saw in the first film. We also hear other super audio logs, and Mr. Incredible's family comes up in the story. And that brings up a question: has Mr. Incredible come back from the dead? It would sort of make sense, right? After all, he has superhuman strength, agility, endurance, speed, senses, and near invulnerability. What's to say that he can't come back from the dead if he's near invulnerable? It's an interesting take on that factor, and honestly, this is probably the single best part about videos that adapt a well-established story for analog horror. What someone can do to warp and change a story to make it more of a horrifying experience is as endless as their imagination, creativity, and hardware, I suppose. And it's especially cool to see themes that are minor in something like The Incredibles, i.e. the darker backstories and events we don't see on camera. And now they take the spotlight and are developed in a unique way story-wise, although it doesn't necessarily mean that the delivery of that story is going to be groundbreaking or anything you haven't seen before. Now, I want to quickly highlight my favorite part of the series, and it's found in part 8. Gazerbeam, a friend of Mr. Incredible, has his audio log play, and we find out that 3 people have been murdered, most likely by the same person. It's assumed that those 3 are the Thrilling 3 that Gazerbeam brings up in his audio log, which are a superhero team in the Incredibles lore consisting of Apogee, Phalange, and their new leader replacing Dynaguy after his cape-related death, Gazerbeam. We also get a serial killer note and a mask they left. We then get quizzed on if we can recognize a super versus a really messed up version of themselves, and then we see this.
Strange to you.
It's looking like Mr. Incredible ripped his wife's face off, right? It's absolutely brutal looking too, and that turn in the story took me by surprise. Pair that with the possibility that Mr. Incredible slaughtered himself after the people he saved turned against him, and now he's back as an unfeeling killing machine, and you have yourself a disturbing The Incredibles story. I wonder if any other supers are going to join in on the rampage too, and if they're going to get zombified forms as well. What the is that what I think that is? Despite what I said about the series relying heavily on the use of overused tropes, I'll eagerly await the other parts of the series to see what happens in the end. Just because I wasn't strong enough to cover every detail in the series, it doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy anything in it, if that wasn't obvious already. But that does beg the question that I've been sitting on for a while, and that's why these types of analog horror videos look and feel so familiar. Why do I, and quite frankly many others, feel like we're watching the same videos over and over again? I ask this because it's a bit prevalent here. We looked at a one-off video and a series for the beloved Incredibles movie, and I do think that more can be done with the stories created here, and the medium as a whole. I like giving constructive criticism in these videos, and I felt like I was struggling here trying to come up with something without sounding like a dick. How do you say to someone that you think they should employ practices that other people have done that's in a different caliber without tearing down everything they've made? Is there a better way to say it? And like I've already said, I enjoy the story in the N.A.S. Files series and I want to see its conclusion, but the execution is what I find a bit iffy. So, am I a hypocrite? Can I get away with wanting more of what could be saturating the genre? Well, I wanted to quickly touch on a video I saw recently. This video is called Analog Horror Has a Slot Problem by X Woodcat because he managed to put into words what I had been feeling and thinking for a while now but couldn't. You should definitely check his video out and his one on people making analog horror out of anything if you want more in-depth info on this topic, because I won't be getting too into the finer details like he did. But basically, we have some very overused tropes in analog horror that everyone seems to copy. You know, the still image of a scary face, text on screen with eerie music, a PSA, oh my god, the abundance of PSAs, etc. By themselves, they're not bad, but when everyone's doing it, then everything starts to look same. You can correlate that with how accessible the genre is to get into, not only thanks to YouTube, but because of video editing software like CapCut that's easy to use and comes with inbuilt filters and tools to allow people to do complicated editing simply. Combine that with people turning this into a game of being the first to do something and flood the market with it, meme videos and social media style brain rot and short jumps from trend to trend in short form content, and we can see how all of this could deteriorate the genre. Having this stuff in analog horror is a great example of anachronism. I had no idea this word even existed, and again, shoutouts to X Woodcat for bringing this word to light, since it explains so much of what I've been feeling about analog horror and other pieces of media. Anachronism is something belonging or appropriate to a period other than that in which it exists or is portrayed. So, Labubu's in analog horror really takes the atmosphere that's meant to be built in these videos out, because Labubus are modern creations, and analog is not. So there's a massive clash, and you're really taken out of it. There's a lot more to it, but that's not exactly the main focus here. So, like I've said, check out X Woodcat's videos on the topic. Regardless, fellas, not everything needs to be made into an analog horror, but I think the dark themes present in the Incredibles movie can translate very well to it. We've seen a good glimpse of that potential, but I think it can be taken further. In CLOWNZ's series case, I think it's going in a good direction story-wise, but the presentation should have a bit more time put into it. I understand that not everyone is a skilled 3D modeler or proficient in creating live action pieces, but if you can honestly say you did your best with what you have, I think it'll show whether the quality is there or not. And with that being said, that's been the video. Thanks for watching. Did you find anything we looked at disturbing? Let me know if you did or didn't in the comments section, and let me know if you agree with what I was talking about before with everything feeling the same. or if you disagree, and like and subscribe if you'd like to see more analog horror videos like this in general or just more of my videos. And as always, we can't forget the shout out to my lovely patrons and YouTube members, and a big shout out to the highest tier Patreon members Joel Matthew Colgrove, La Creatura, and Low Budget Detective 034. Thank you all for your continued contributions, and thank you to everyone else too. You guys are absolute legends. Stay tuned for more videos like this. Relevant links will be in the description if you want to further look into them, and I'll catch ya in the next one.